Welcome to a quick introduction to the pre-release event and sealed format for Star Wars Unlimited. We're going to discuss what you can expect at these pre-release events, talk about what sealed is, and tips for constructing a sealed deck. So what is a pre-release? A pre-release is a celebration of a new set being added to the game. These casual events are held by game stores the week before a new set's official release date, and is your first chance at getting new cards and trying out the new set. By participating in the event, you are given a pre-release kit which includes everything you need to play. You'll construct your sealed deck and play in a 4-round tournament. And what is sealed? Sealed is a format that is primarily played during pre-release events, though it is not limited to pre-releases only. Sealed might also be played if you want to play limited in a group that is less than 6 players. A format is a set of guidelines for playing the Star Wars Unlimited card game for a particular event, including which cards you can use and how you build your deck. In general, there are 2 broad types of formats: constructed and limited. Constructed formats are those in which you build your deck beforehand. The main constructed format for Star Wars Unlimited is called Premier. In limited formats like Sealed and Draft, players construct their deck as part of the event. In Sealed, players receive 6 packs. If you're attending a pre-release, the pre-release kit contains these 6 packs. And the contents of those 6 packs will be the pool from which you build your deck. Based on the contents of each booster pack, this means that your sealed pool will be a total of 96 cards, consisting of an average of 6 leaders, 6 bases, 54 commons, 18 uncommons, 6 rare or legendaries, plus 6 foils of random rarity. Even though you can use the bases you open in your pack, including any rare bases, each player is going to have free access, usually provided by the store, to all common bases. For the Spark of Rebellion pre-release specifically, you're also going to get a promo Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader in your pre-release kit that you can use as your leader. Once you open your 6 packs, everyone will have an allotted time slot to build their decks. The deck you build is going to consist of 1 leader, 1 base, and a minimum 30 card draw deck. Deck construction follows these guidelines. Aspect penalty still applies, and you can run any number of copies of a single card. It is not limited to 3. So if you open 5 copies of a card, you can run all 5 copies in your deck. At the end of the day, in order to win a game of Star Wars Unlimited, you need to put damage on your opponent's base, and units are the primary way you're going to be doing that, particularly in Limited. Because of that, we're going to want our deck to consist of mostly units. A suggested template to consider would be to run around 25 units and around 5 events/upgrades. But this should vary depending on your pool. For example, if you open a bunch of good events, then perhaps your deck could be something like 22 units and 8 events/upgrades. And even though you're allowed to bring more than 30 cards, in general, you're going to want to keep to exactly 30 cards. The more cards you have in your deck, the less likely you are to find the cards you need. Finally, the rest of your pool that is not in your deck is considered your sideboard. You're free to swap cards in and out between your sideboard and main deck in between rounds. You thought a card would be good in your deck, but after the first round realized it doesn't work, just swap it out for something else for the next round. Let's take a closer look at aspects and the aspect penalty for deck construction. The leader and base you choose are going to provide 3 aspects. In this example, if you choose Luke Skywalker and Chopper base, they provide vigilance, heroism, and cunning aspects respectively. In general, you're going to make your deck consist of cards that stick to the aspects provided by your leader and base. However, you can technically include any card in your deck. In order to play a card from the other aspects, you must pay the aspect penalty. That is an additional 2 cost for every symbol that is not provided by your leader and base. For example, playing Akbar in a Luke and Chopper base deck would cost 5 instead of 3, because green is not one of the symbols provided by your base and leader. Cantina Bouncer would cost 7, because even though your base provides a cunning symbol, it only provides 1 and not 2 of them, and Cantina Bouncer specifically requires 2 cunning symbols total. After you open your 6 packs, it's recommended you organize your pool in a way that makes it easy for you to analyze what you have. For example, you might want to lay out your leaders and bases in their own pile, and then make a pile of each color. Another common thing to do is to look at all your rares and legendaries, as those cards are usually powerful and can sometimes win games just on their own. Opening a really powerful rare or legendary might just be reason enough to influence the colors you build your deck around. Since your leader is a central card to your deck, the deck you're going to build is going to depend on which leaders you open in your packs. So one of the first things you're going to want to look at are the leaders that you pulled. Then we can see what cards we have in our pool that benefit their strategy. Let's take a look at some sample leaders for a few general ideas on how we can build around them. As a quick note before we get to that, keep in mind that you don't need a specific leader in order to run those exact colors. What I mean is, Leia and Catacombs of Cadera provide the same colors as Sabine with Echo Base, so you can run the exact same deck under both leader/base pairs. Luke and Vader being the promo leaders, it's possible those are the two leaders you're going to see the most for the Spark of Rebellion pre-release. So let's look at them first, starting with Luke. When evaluating a leader, we want to look at 1. Their aspects. Luke's aspects are Vigilance and Heroism. 2. Their ability. Luke can give shields to heroism units you play. And 3. Their traits. Luke has Force and Rebel. So at a top level for Luke, we want heroism units, and perhaps cards that care about Force and Rebel units. In the card pool for Spark of Rebellion, there aren't any cards that care about the Force trait at the common rarity, so it's going to be tricky to build a cohesive strategy around that, since it would rely on uncommon and rare cards, which we won't have access to many of those, if any. To that extent, cards like Restored Arc 170, Consular Security Force, and Vigilant Honor Guards are cards to look for. The Luke starter deck pairs him with the Cunning aspect, so if you want to include that as your third color, cards like Rogue Operative and Ozotek Liberator Gunship with Chopper Base are cards you want to look for. Looking at Vader, his aspects are Aggression and Villainy. His ability lets him deal damage to a unit and a base if you played a Villainy card. And he has the Force, Imperial, and Sith traits. To that extent, cards like Death Star Stormtrooper, First Legion Snowtrooper, and Imperial Interceptor are cards you want to look for. Vader goes paired well with Command, with cards like Seasoned Shore Trooper and Super Laser Technician, and Command Center as your base. Looking at some other leaders, like the ones we open in our packs, let's say we pulled Leia Organa. She's Command and Heroism, and her ability cares about having Rebel cards, as she lets you attack with more than one as a single action. So we're going to want to see how many cards in our pool are Rebels. Cards like Battlefield Marine, Echo Base Defender, and Fleet Lieutenant are good cards to look for. For the base, we want to pick a color that complements our leader's playstyle. Leia likes to attack, so it makes sense if we pulled cards like Spec Force Soldier and Green Squadron A-Wing, then we might want to consider making our third color red, and using one of our red bases, like Catacombs of Cadera, to give the deck some extra aggression. Next, let's look at Director Krennic. Krennic is Vigilance and Villainy, and he likes his units to be damaged. He has the Imperial and Official traits. He works particularly well with cards like Scout Bike Pursuer, Death Trooper, and Academy Defense Walker. Like Vader, Krennic also goes paired well with Command, with cards like Seasoned Shore Trooper and Super Laser Technician, and Command Center as your base. Another thing to look for in your pool is removal. Removal refers to cards that help you destroy or deal with your opponent's units. Each color handles this in specific ways. Let's look at each color with an example. Vigilance has instant defeat effects like Vanquish, which says defeat a non-leader unit. Command likes to have units on the board, and it uses your own units to defeat your opponent's units. Cards like Strike True will have one of your units deal its power to an enemy unit. Aggression likes to deal direct damage. Open Fire says deal 4 damage to a unit. Cunning doesn't have much in terms of direct removal, but it does have cards like Waylay that returns a non-leader unit to its owner's hand, which can help clear the board and put your opponent behind the turn if you waylay a big unit they just played. Lastly, you want to make sure that you're able to fully maximize your resources by making use of every resource every turn. The best way to do this is to make sure that your deck consists of cards of a variety of costs, called a curve. If your deck was full of 1-cost cards only, you run out of cards fairly quickly and wouldn't have any high-impact cards later in the game. However, if you only put the highest cost, most powerful cards in your deck, you'll probably lose before you even get a chance to play them. What we want is a balance that also plays into your deck strategy. The top of the curve is the cost value you have the most of. What we want to do is find a sweet spot for our deck. For example, if you're playing a fast aggressive deck, then you probably want the top to be a bit more to the left with more cheap cards over expensive cards. And if you're playing a more control or mid-range deck, then you might want the curve to be a bit more to the right with more big cards that take over the board. In closing, pre-release events are a casual event. You're going to have a wide variety of people, young and old, beginner and expert. So be kind and friendly to those around you, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And the last thing I'll say, and probably the most important thing in my mind, is to have fun.